Okay, you guys. Ah, okay. Hi, everyone. I feel like such an idiot. I have literally been talking for the last 26 minutes without realizing that I had, I thought I clicked live and I hadn't clicked live. And I just saw someone's comment saying she's on mute and doesn't know it. And I was like, are they talking about me? You guys, I am actually really disappointed in myself. I've literally been talking about Barbie for the last 26 minutes to nothing. Hi, I feel like such an idiot. Wow. I feel actually deeply embarrassed. Okay. All right. We're going to do this again. I'm sorry for starting at 27 minutes late. Okay, you can just see how embarrassed I am. Okay. Welcome to Carry On 3. But I'm on now, so I'm really glad. I can't believe it. Oh my God, we didn't see and heard you. I'm so glad you guys are here. Oh, there's an echo. Someone's saying. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm gonna try this again. Hi everyone. Welcome to Carry On 3. If you're wondering what's going on, I feel like a massive idiot because for the last 25 minutes, I was going through everything I thought about Barbie, only to see a comment that said, I think she's on mute and doesn't know it. And I was like, they're not talking about me, are they? And I realized I forgot to hit go live. So let's do take two. And there's an echo. Hold on, I'll fix it. Just give me 1 second. Input, output, input. Yeti. Okay, that should fix it. Hopefully. Okay. So let's talk about Barbie and not how stupid I am. Okay. Um, okay, I went to watch Barbie last week, and I hated it, as everybody would expect. I was very excited to watch it initially before I found out it was this massive feminist movement because I am a 90s kid and I grew up with Barbie. And so I was very excited. I love that song, but, I'm a Barbie girl. I love that song. I kind of like grew up jamming to that song. So my friend and I were super excited, but then I started seeing all the interviews. Everybody, Nerdrotic was talking about it, Critical Drinkers talking about it. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is not going to be the fun summer fling that I was expecting, but it was actually quite torturous to sit through. And if it weren't literally my job, because I had promised that I would come and live stream it to you guys and like live stream my response to you guys, I would have walked out at the 20-minute mark because there's a specific speech that pops up at that point that was just so woke and so obvious in the ideology of the entire movie that I figured, you know what, it's not worth it. But I sat through it for you guys, and so that I can tell you all about it and maybe make a video about it, but probably not. I think this is as much as I'm going to review it. So let's go. And just a heads up, there are going to be spoilers, but to be fair, there isn't much of a plot to the movie. In fact, I had to like really think about it. I was like, what was really the plot of the movie? It was more of a dissemination of the ideology that the creators believed. It was more about that than anything else. So, um, so from that perspective, honestly, it was very interesting because you get a sense of exactly what they think about everything, right? Like you get a sense of like this is how they view the world. This is how they view relationships between men and women. This is how they think about themselves. This is how they think about their men. And it's very, I mean, it's very disheartening to see how terrible their perspective on men really are, perspectives on men are, and on themselves. So I'll start with the intro, which was probably the most interesting part about the movie because it's an homage to 2001 Space Odyssey. And they do, you know, shot for shot recreations where instead of the obelisk coming to Earth, appearing on Earth in front of all the apes, this is about Barbie appearing in front of a bunch of young girls who are playing with baby dolls, like baby dolls that are just babies. And their whole perspective was that before the advent of Barbie, all young girls everywhere ever thought about was that they would be mothers, that they would be playing out the roles of mothers to these little babies. And so they're shown that in, you know, the all these young girls everywhere are ironing clothes, feeding the baby, all these things. And then Barbie appears and it changes the trajectory of women everywhere. It makes us, suddenly, it makes us willing to step out of the household and think about ourselves beyond motherhood and think maybe, you know, maybe I'll be a pilot, maybe I'll be a firefighter, maybe I'll be a doctor. So that's what the movie really starts with, is that Barbie is almost a create is such a feminist icon that it changed the, you know, the trajectory of women, professionally and mentally. So I thought that that was giving a little too much credence to Barbie, to be honest, but good start there. And then we get into Barbie Land. We find out what's life like in Barbie Land, and from that perspective, like visually, it's really well done. Like Barbie Land looks super cool. Like 10-year-old me would be super excited to like drive a car around and wear all the dresses and play with all those different dolls and all that. From that perspective, it was really well done. But the point of Barbie Land is that it is a matriarchy. So everything's about Barbie. I mean, it's in the name. And every job is performed by a Barbie. So there's a Barbie mailman and a Barbie uh, construction woman, and the the mayor is a Barbie, and even the, you know, the justices, the court justices are all Barbies. So it's very clear that the Kens of Barbie Land don't really have any power. They don't really have any say. They're just kind of shoved aside, like get out of here. We don't need you here. They're kind of just ruminating in the corner, feeling very resentful because nobody even talks to them, nobody even looks at them, kind of thing. And so that's a very interesting. Again, this whole movie is about what these creators really think, right? Because the plot is not really strong. This is about, they're telling you how they think about the world, and their ideal world is where women are doing everything and the men play absolutely no role, including romantically, because there's no romance really shown in this movie at all. At the end of the first day in Barbie Land, Ken is trying to stay over because he's stereotypical Ken, she's stereotypical Barbie, and they're supposed to be boyfriend and girlfriend. And he's trying to spend the night so that they can hang out together. And she's like, "Why would you stay over? This is Barbie Land. This is not Ken Land." So she puts him in his place real fast. And as she turns around, you see it's girls' night. She's gonna have a girls' party every night, all night. This is what it's all about. It's just about having girlfriends. It's not about having any sort of meaningful relationship with a man, because who would want to do that? Get the hell out of here. So she kicks him to the curb. And this is supposed to be reflection on incels, really, right? And incels are so, they're so much so just the butt of everyone's jokes right now. It's like we don't need to have empathy, right, for incels. I mean, yeah, they're lonely men who are frustrated with their loneliness because they don't get any meaningful interactions with women, and that's turning them resentful, that's making them angry. And we don't need to have any empathy for that, right? They deserve it because they're men, right? And so this is supposed to be, it's not Ken, this is incel Ken, in Ken, Inkel. So Barbie Land is perfect thanks to all the women being in charge. But things start to go wrong with Margot Robbie's character. She starts to suddenly experience nihilistic thoughts. She starts thinking about death. That her feet, instead of she being on tippy toes, they land flat on the ground, and she develops cellulite. And she says, "What the hell is going on? Like, what's wrong with me?" And she finds out that the girl who out in the world, real world, is playing with her must be playing with her in some incorrect way. I don't know. That's the best I can explain that part. And that she has to go out into the real world to find out what's wrong with the girl who's playing with her. Now, if you're going to ask a question like, does that mean every Barbie in Barbie Land is being played with by some girl out in the real world? Yeah, I guess. And so then why aren't there more Barbies? I don't know. The logic of this movie doesn't really make a ton of sense. We'll move right past it. So she goes out into the real world, and and this part, by the way, is visually so stunning because it shows her going from into different outfits through space, through like through different terrains, and the outfit, she changes outfits every time, and it's just super cute. It's like it's filmed really, really well. I think they like visually they got these points really right. But what happens is that Ken has stowed away with her. He wants to come with her to also discover what's going on into the real world, but he also feels like if they spend time together, maybe something could happen romantically. Like they should be together. They're Barbie and Ken. And she's all irritated, like, why are you here with me? Get out of here. And but he tags along, and they go out into the real world, and really quickly Barbie discovers that the real world is not a matriarchy. And when they walk by a construction site, it's all inhabited by men instead of women, and they say really sexist things to her. Some man just walks up to her and smacks her butt because that's totally something that happens, right? I mean, every woman watching this, didn't that just happen to you today? Every man just comes up and smacks your butt on the street, right? Um, Again, it's their perspective on the real world. It's very interesting, very inaccurate, but very interesting. And so she's trying to figure out, where's this girl who's playing with me? And she realizes that this girl is out in at this high school. She goes to the high school. She goes to talk to this girl, and this girl is like the most vicious, angry, communist, anti-capitalist, anti-everything type of girl, which is basically every young activist that's represented in Hollywood these days. But obviously they have like godlike status in Hollywood, where anything they say, it's like we're supposed to look at it as like the words of wisdom from God or something. And she says, of course I don't care about you, Barbie. You're just a plastic, anti-feminist shill, capitalist shill. Like, get the hell out of here. And so the words that she says to her end up making Barbie really cry, really cry for the first time in her life. And it's interesting because it actually captures how women actually talk to each other, and like how meanly women can talk to each other. Because right now, all they ever do in Hollywood is that they represent women as overly positive. Like we're always nice to each other. We always say the best things. Oh, you go, girl. We're always like so sweet to women, not to men, but always to women. We're always represented as being very sweet. And the reality is that women are actually really mean to each other. They're capable of being really mean to each other because men are prone to fighting with each other. They'll like physically fight. Whereas women will actually hurt beyond that, right? They'll hurt with words. There was a study done of schoolyard fighting, right, with kids that um, they aim to record how many times boys got into a fight during recess versus girls. And the numbers came back and they saw that the boys were getting into fights, let's say like 10 times or whatever the number was, but that girls were only getting into fights, like they were not getting into fights at all, is what the study came back with. And they realized something was wrong with the way that they were capturing the data. So how is it possible that girls are not fighting at all? It's just that when girls fight, it's so subtle, right? It's all behind your back. It's not like they'll come up to you and say, I'm angry with you. It'll be something so subtle in the way, like, you can't sit with us, or just like turning away from someone, and like it'll be all these like subtle ways that girls fight with each other. And the biggest piece of it tends to be reputation destruction, right? Like the worst kind of fight. Like if you were in high school and you had a fight with a girl, the things that she said about you behind your back were like the most vicious things possible, right? And I know I went through this. Like I had a female bully and that I was dealing with when I was in middle school, and it was like the stuff she said about me. I mean, I would never believe it was possible for a person to be that vicious. And I didn't experience it at that age, right? And so that's what's interesting, is that this movie accidentally captures that, even though that's not how they're looking at it. They're just saying that she's entitled in these beliefs of being so angry and vicious to a person, because again, it's the patriarchy. It's probably the patriarchy's fault that she's being so mean to Barbie. So while Barbie's character is crying and trying to understand what to do next, Ken is having the greatest day of his life, because while in Barbie land he's completely ignored, completely mistreated, never even like looked at. Here in the real world, people talk to him like he's a normal human being, like you talk to anybody, asking him for the time. And he can't believe that people are showing him just basic decency. And this drives him to realize that, oh, the real world is not a matriarchy. And he goes into the school library and discovers that, oh, we actually live in a patriarchy. And he's amazed. He's like, this is great. I'm Ken. This is not Barbie's land. This could be Ken's land. And he goes around super excited, and he wants to see how far the patriarchy really extends. So he walks into a doctor's office and he decides that he wants to operate on someone. He wants to be, Dr. Ken. And so he asks a female doctor if he can go and operate on someone. And she's like, no, you can't. You're not a doctor. He's like, but I'm a man. She's like, you're not a doctor, though. You can't just do that. And it's really interesting because, again, the movie is accidentally proving itself wrong, right? That we don't actually live in a patriarchy, that just because you're a man doesn't mean you just get everything you want. You still have to earn things, right? You still have to earn, like, you get basic human decency. Everybody's entitled to that, but you still have to earn your titles. You have to earn your position within the society. And that's something that I'll address properly in a different video, because it's a very complex topic, right? Is that, do we live in a patriarchy? And I would argue, no, we live in a meritocracy. That's where we live. It's that if you are someone who's hardworking and you do your job right, and you go, you arm yourself with as much education and experience as possible, you will get the jobs that you're always aiming for, regardless of your skin color, regardless of your gender. Now, are there certain benefits that men get? Yeah. That, there's always some form of bias everywhere. But it's not just bias towards men. There's also bias towards women. Attractive women. Attractive women do far better in life than less attractive women, right? That's a bias. Why does that exist? There's always some level of bias, but if you look at just the balance of probability, it's not like just because you're a woman, you're going to be held back in life and you can't become a doctor, or you can't become this, you can't become that. And people often point to various jobs and say, well, why why are there more men doing that job than women, right? US presidents is a great example, or chief justices is another example that people often use. But it's like the examples people don't look at is like, why are 99.5% of construction workers all men? Or garbage workers, why are they mostly men? Oil rig workers, people often bring that up, right? Like, why are they mostly men? Why is it that when we're talking about, trying to understand if we live in a patriarchy, we only look at the glamorized positions, right? Um, like being in spots of leadership. Why is that always the only jobs that are coveted? When you look at something like medicine, medicine actually is tilted heavily towards women. There are so many more women that work in medicine than men do. But again, it's one of those situations where, in order to prove a patriarchy, we look at very specific glamorized positions to say, oh, look, it's because men are preventing women from entering. Couldn't possibly be any other reason, right? So back to the movie, Ken discovers that, okay, there is a patriarchy, but it's not as effective as he would like it to be, because he can't just go be a doctor, right? And he asks someone, he's like, why aren't you guys doing patriarchy, right? Like, do you guys not really have a patriarchy here? And the man tells him, no, we do. We just hide it. We just hide it better than you, better now. And that's again one of those sneaky little arguments where, um, instead of arguing the point, do we really live in a patriarchy? The argument is, we do, but just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You just can't see it. They're just really good at hiding it, right? So Ken, knowing everything he knows and having grabbed some books on the patriarchy, goes back to Barbie Land and decides to turn it into a patriarchy done right. Meanwhile, Barbie is still in the real world trying to figure out what's going on with this existential crisis that she's having. And she realizes that young, terrible girl who said those terrible things to her is not the girl who's actually playing with her, it's her mom. And her mom is America Ferrera. And America Ferrera's character is having a difficult time of it in life because she's unhappy, and her relationship with her daughter is not that great. And so she's been making these sketches where she's been giving Barbie real life problems like cellulite, like flat feet, like thoughts of death. And that's what's creating problems for a stereotypical Barbie. And so they have these conversations about life and girlhood and all these things, and decide, you know what, they need to go back to Barbie Land. And so they do, and that young girl tags along as well. And for whatever reason, I'm telling you, this is the main plot, by the way. This is the main plot, is that this woman is unhappy and is making drawings of Barbie, and she's like a 40-year-old woman. So when they go back to Barbie Land, they discover that Ken has been successful. He has turned Barbie Land into Ken's world. I forget what he's called it, but it's all about Ken. It's all about men. It's all about horses too, for whatever reason. And so he's taken over Barbie's house. He's like changed all of the decor. And the best part is, all the other Barbies that exist in Barbie Land have now all been subjugated. They've all been brainwashed into being very subservient to the Kens. And this is their take on the traditional woman, right? Because these Barbies are okay with playing, being second fiddle. They're okay with being, kind of like a step behind the Kens. And so the commentary by the creators is that if you're a traditional woman who decides to couple with a man, and let's say he's the head of the household, and you decide that you're going to be a mother, or you're just going to be on his side, that means that you've been brainwashed by the patriarchy. And that was just like the worst messaging possible. Because, and I'll mention this a little bit more later, but, like, the movie is not about love at all. It's not about encouraging love with, coupling with a man and saying like, "Oh, let's build something together." It's not about that at all. It's actually every example of that is done in such a way to kind of show that your engagement with men has to be with you deciding not to love yourself, and you're now brainwashed and part of the patriarchy. And so Barbie sees this. She has like the super cute outfit, but she's devastated and has this meltdown because her entire land has disappeared. Ken and the rest of the Kens are adding all these laws to basically take away rights from Barbies, and they're turning, they're changing the constitution because of course Barbie Land has a constitution. I mean, they have chief justices. Of course, they also have constitution. They have a constitution, and she's really sad to see this. And America Ferrera's character says it's really sad that all the other Barbies have gotten, despite being strong-willed, Barbies previously, it's really sad that they've gotten manipulated because they had no ability to protect themselves from the patriarchy. And so then in the worst hour, America Ferrera's character gives this long speech where she talks about how difficult it is to be a woman. And this was so patronizing. Dear God. It was like being told that being a woman is so so terrible. Like, isn't it so bad that women have to go through life being women? Like, oh, we worry about our weight, but maybe we have to also worry about being healthy, and we have to be mothers, but we also have to have careers, and we can't talk too much about our careers, and we can't talk too much about being mothers, and all these like, so she was like showing all these contradictions and all the ways that there are all these expectations placed on us by society that make it so hard to be us. And it was so sad because we can blame the patriarchy all we want for all that, but is that really the case? Like, how much of the expectations that we have put on ourselves, like, actually because of us and our willingness to play into that? Like, do men at the end of the day really care if we wear makeup, or if there's a little cellulite, or if we put on a pound or two, or like especially in my relationships with my husband, but also in like in the past, in all the men in my life, they don't notice any of that. They're not aware of any of that. I'm the one who's sitting and thinking about like, well, I need to be this weight, or my skin doesn't look that good today, or I need to make sure I do this. It's like it's a woman thing. We think about these things. We think about nitpicking every single little thing. But to blame all of it, oh, it's because of men that we're so miserable. It couldn't possibly be because we have any hand in our misery. But that was like the overarching perspective on womanhood, is that it's so hard because men want it to be hard for us. Men want to keep us miserable. And this long speech by America Ferrera ends up deprogramming all the Barbies, where they wake up and they're like, "Oh, you're right. It is hard to be a woman, and let's kick the Ken's ass and like take back control." And they do. They take back control of Barbie Land, and they and then Ken, seeing that his kingdom, there you go, that's what it was called, kingdom. His kingdom is sliding away from him, and he has this meltdown, and he says, there's no me without you, to Barbie. He's like, there's no Ken without Barbie. And she doesn't want anything to do with him. She just says to him like, you know, you can be whatever you want. You don't have to be attached to me. You're Ken. Like, go be yourself and be okay with that. Be okay and complete in yourself. And so she tells him to, run along, and he's like, "Oh, great. I'll go be Ken." And then the mayor of Barbie Land says, "You know what? we're going to take away all the rights of Ken again. This is going to go back to being a matriarchy, and the Kens will get just as much power in Barbie land as women have in the real world, as if to say that women have none. And the Kens are like, okay, I guess we're back to being subservient to the Barbies of the world. And that's how the movie ends. The movie ends with them rejoicing that they can now just go be themselves, but without any representation. It's If this sounded terribly trite, then you are correct. And I think my head hurts from talking about it twice. Once to all by myself, thinking I was talking to you guys, and now I've told you all again. But the saddest part about this, the way this movie was done, was about how, and I mentioned this earlier, about what role love played in it. Because it didn't at all, right? In all the promotions, the director Greta, I forget her last name, Greta and Margot Robbie talk about how this movie is about heart, and yet I found it to be completely devoid of love. And there's an interview there's a podcast that I watched some time ago between this guy named Andrew Clavin. He's from the Daily Wire, and he sat down with the trigonometry people, and that interview just really struck a chord with me, because he talks about, because his past is he was a writer in Hollywood way back when, and he talked about how every good story starts with the idea of a boy meets a girl. And if you think about it, there are some of these huge epic movies, just beautiful, wonderful movies, and at the heart of it still is about, often, not always, is about a boy and a girl, or at least some form of a relationship. Maybe it's father and son, maybe it's father and daughter, maybe it's mother and daughter. There's always some bond that the movie is about. And like, you watch, Gladiator, right? It's about his loss of his family. You watch Titanic. At the heart of Titanic is this love story. And that's what gives a story proper gravitas, where it gives, what love does to a person is that it helps them get perspective on what's important in life, right? It's like and to love someone and to build a life with them is to learn what you need to sacrifice, including what you need to sacrifice about your self-sufficiency and your independence, because it takes a lot to allow two people to be together and build a good life together, and then later hopefully build a family together. It takes a lot of sacrifice from both sides. And so this movie doesn't even hint at any of that, right? Love is irrelevant. Like, love between a man and woman is irrelevant. So really, it has so much hatred from men. It has so much disgust for even the idea of coupling, which is so sad, because I would think that there would be some part of them that would be excited at the idea that two people should come together and build something great together. Instead, it's all obsession. It's just like this massive obsession with self-love, right? Love yourself, be whatever you want, and love for other girls, right? Not everyone. It's not love for all people. It's not that at all. It's just love between women. Like, your best gal pals have these like nights out. Oh, you go girl. Oh, hi Barbie. It's all very positive, woman to woman positivity, but there's no positivity for all people, and there's definitely no positivity for men. And it's instead, like I was saying, it's an obsession with self, and it's really that narcissism that has taken over culturally. And that is a video, by the way, I plan to make later, is like to try to understand our culture of narcissism. And it's it's this desire to not need men in any form. That's actually really what this movie is pushing for, that you don't need men, right? We can have a matriarchy. We can do everything. And there's it doesn't actually capture what the female experience is really like, right? And I'm someone who I'm married now, but I'd been single for a very long time. And what happens when you're single for a very long time, where you're just waiting, you're like, where is he? Where you're just waiting for a long time, is that you form a great sisterhood with certain girls. You form such a great sisterhood where and then you make the most of it, because sometimes in life, in love, you're just sitting and waiting to meet someone. I mean, you can take certain actions, but mostly you're just sitting and waiting until the time's right. And you build in that time, you can build a great sisterhood where you go out and you celebrate Valentine's Day together, and you have dates on Friday, or you like do girls' night out, and like there's men aren't particularly like that. They're not oriented towards that kind of brotherhood in that form. But women really do that. But it's like, what is the point of that? Is it to keep you from your man, or is it to help you kind of deal with things until you find some love? Because it can be very lonely when you're without love in life. But this movie's entire focus is, no, you don't need a man. Just hang out with your girlfriends and go become chief justices, and become a mayor and do this and set up governments and like be a mailman, and I keep saying mailman, mailwoman, and go to join construction. We don't need men. And it's this desire to erase men from everything. And it makes me so sad. It makes me really, really sad, because to have the love of a good man is really transforming. And good movies used to tell us about that. They used to tell us about how impactful and transformative the love of a good man and the love of a good woman means, and what people can do together as part of strong coupledom, right? It used to be about that. Um, and now more and more modern movies are trying to convince us that we don't need that kind of love. We just need narcissistic love, right? One-sided love to just ourselves, and then like girlfriends. And like bonds between girls is good, but that's not everything. That's not everything you need in life, right? And the perspective that, what about these men who are construction workers, who are doing all the hard work needed to keep our society running every day, right? Whether that's going up on power lines, like doing all the dirty work, right? I love that show, Dirty Jobs, because it shows you some of the hardest work that exists, that need to be done in society, that mostly men go for. Men are willing to do the harder work. And working, people mention oil rigs a lot. Working in the oil rigs is because it's like deeply dangerous work. And you get rid of men tomorrow, who's going to do all that? We're not going to do that. Like, is there any gratitude for the hard work that gets done, where men don't get thanked for that? They don't, and they don't ask for it. They don't need to be thanked. They're just doing their work. They're just doing their job, right? And or even the idea that in love, a man will sacrifice himself for the sake of his woman, I should say. I'm not advocating for any polyamorous relationship here, but a good man will sacrifice everything for his woman, right? And a lot of stories a lot of stories that used to be told exemplified that, right? And just a basic example would be from Harry Potter. From in the third book, Harry can hear the last moments of his parents' death. He can hear that when Voldemort finds them, and James, his father, is just sitting on the couch. He doesn't even have his wand with him. And he says to Lily, go. Like, I'm going to do whatever I can to be between you and death. And that's what he does. He sacrifices himself to give Lily time to get away with their son. That is the love of a good man. Like, it's just a story. It makes me emotional. It makes me emotional because it's just a story. But that's what men do. Like, good men do so much to make sure that their women are taken care of. And we're no longer willing to recognize that, which is really sad. It's really sad. Okay. So that was my review of Barbie twice. I think I did a better job the first time around. I'm not just saying that, but I think I did a better job the first time around. Should you go watch it? I would say probably not. It's not really worth your time. But it is interesting from the perspective of seeing what that ideology, the new feminist, this is like woke feminism. This is what I call woke feminism. This is what woke feminism wants. Woke feminism wants women to evolve beyond any sort of love for men. It wants to erase men from society. It wants everything to be about women, and that's it. Nothing else matters. And so it's very emblematic of that ideology. This movie captures it exactly right. So it's very sad from that perspective, and that's why we gotta keep talking about it. People are gonna, on The View, they're like, why are people complaining about this movie? It's just a doll movie. It's not just a doll movie. It's propaganda. And that's why we have to talk about it, because it reflects real thoughts in culture, and it reflects real thoughts in Hollywood that are being pushed. That this is propaganda created to further this kind of ideology. And it's flawed deeply, but people often don't know how to argue against it, because it's like, someone comes up to you and says, like, you know, uh, prove to me that we don't live in a patriarchy. And it's impossible. Like, that idea that we live in a patriarchy has just become widely accepted because people don't know how to argue against it. Because woke people are really good at arguing their points by just yelling. So it's very difficult to argue against. So that's why I make this content, because I want to argue against the wokeness, and I want to hopefully arm you guys on how to argue against it. That's really what I want to do. So, and hopefully I can. Okay, so I'm gonna answer some questions, but thank you guys for like sticking around for this. I hope, by the way, you've had a chance, if you haven't, to watch my newest video that went live this morning. It's called, it talks about activism. It's called Rebels with Too Many Causes. It's a part 2 to the What the Hell is Going On series that I've started. So it's part of this exploration of wokeness and, kind of the culture war that we're really embroiled in today. And I think activists are really the biggest part of that. They're the ones who are really at the front lines pushing this ideology. So please check that out. And I hope you enjoyed that video. And now let me answer some questions. Okay, I was just talking about this video. Great. Benji says, loved your most recent video on activism. I am not against activism in principle, but for it to make a difference, it requires personal sacrifice. MLK made lots of them for the civil rights movement. Yes, I completely agree. I think activism is about personal sacrifice of your time, your energy, just for this, right? To speak about things that you see are wrong in society. But what's really missing from modern woke activists is any sort of understanding of how the world really works, right? And that's like, beware of making recommendations out in the world when you don't even understand how it works. You could never suggest something then that's actually accurate and that can actually work. So go check that video out. Hopefully you guys like it. Okay, Shenanigan says, it's like what was talked about last time. Men are not women and women are not men. I suspect part of Barbie's success is that women have been so starved for something made for them, they're willing to overlook the awfulness. Yes, I do agree with that. I also think the reason that Barbie is so successful so far is because they completely um, they kind of pushed it as if it was going to be a lighthearted, promoted it like it was going to be this lighthearted movie, right? But they weren't, that there wasn't this complex agenda at the root of it. That it was just going to be a feel good movie. And I think people are starved for that. I think a movie that just helps people have that like escape hatch out of a bleak reality, because I do feel like a lot of people feel like right now we're in a very bleak reality. I mean, God, we're discovering that UFOs are real. Like, come on, what is going on? So I think that summer flick where they could just get away and like see cute fashion and dress up to go to the movies. I think it was all around feeling like they had some form of escapism, but it's of course not been that. So I'm really curious to see how it continues to do week over week in the box office. That is that mania, Barbie mania, going to die down, or is it that people are really liking this movie? Hua Hawa Sabo says, quality content. I always look forward to your videos since I found your channel. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ian Westcott says, really value rational and balanced analysis. Thank you so much. I really try. That's always my goal on this channel. It's like I never want to give ill thought out takes, you know? Turd Rocket. That's funny. As Disparu recently said, they hire activists who hate value and hate wealth, and then are shocked when said activists turn upon them and strike and protest poor treatment. Barbie seems yet another such embodiment. Yeah, absolutely true. That's exactly right. Xander Pretorius says, imagine if the first Captain America was just Steve complaining about how the military discriminates against smaller people and what a victim he is. Oh my God. Wouldn't you just love that movie? Like imagine if he then proceeded to constantly talk about how hard his life is because he's on the smaller side. And then all the promotion was him, going around and saying, like, if you're a short, like petite man, you need to go watch this movie. If you don't go, then you don't support petite men. So go watch this movie. Turd Rocket, welcome back. It's a sad thing how valuation of men and women today is so focused on external factors, projected or adopted, rather than inward qualities and values which would foster true growth. Yeah, I do think this is really because of social media. I think as long as social media was just about connection with friends, I think it was a healthy tool about keeping up with your friends, like what Facebook was initially, right? Facebook was just about you connecting with people. But with the advent of Twitter and then like the like button, which I think like the concept of getting likes really changed how we thought about how we interact with people in a pretty negative way. It became so much about just like faux reputation creation, that I'm going to just say things that are going to get me as much attention as possible. Sometimes good attention, sometimes bad attention. So it's become about trying to emulate a good reputation versus in real life you earn a good reputation. You do it by working on yourself. You try to be a good person. You do kind of the hard things, and that's what gives you a better, helps you sets you up for a better life. And I think that's what's really missing, is like, why do that when I can just go online and do it easily by saying the right things on social media, right? Chris B says, men have similar/same self worries that women do, but we mostly internalize it all for different reasons. And its baggage gets carried on to our kid. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I would agree with that, because men don't externalize it in the same way. I think we also don't encourage men to be terribly talkative about their insecurities and stuff. We actually encourage them to be really stoic about it. So we don't really give them the opportunity. So like I know I'm at that age where like, people around me are starting to have kids, and the men are trying to think a lot more about like how much emotion are they going to be willing to show in front of their kids. And I think that's a really big question because we women, I think we find it a lot more natural to be emotionally vulnerable, whereas men have to figure that out sometimes. Crispy has a part two. I worry now of a generation of boys told by media that they are not only the cause of all problems, but also not worth giving positive attention. Yeah, that's honestly the really sad part is that we're telling little boys that they're born with this level of sin for the the past, right? We're trying to pin everything that has ever anything bad that has ever happened. We're trying to pin that on um, on men as a whole. And I think that's a really sad thing to do. I actually, should I say it? So I'm going to say it. This is going to be a little bit of a hot take, but I think that the rise in the number of men that are looking to transition to women, I think has in part, not entirely, in part to do with this ostracization, like vilification that's happening of men. That I think young boys are finding it easier just to want to be women instead, because at least then they'll feel less vilified, less self-hatred if they move over to the other side, if that makes sense. Excuse me. GRS says, I feel like the modern day feminism or identity politics is no longer about equality, but rather it's about overreaching, malicious equity or revenge. Yes, you are absolutely right. This is not about equality. We achieved equality in the 90s. We achieved it in the 80s. I go back and I actually watch a lot of TV from the 80s and 90s, American TV, because I feel like we achieved like this pinnacle of how women were represented, how minorities were represented, how men were represented, like, and with good storytelling and good quality work. And then we've come through this age where there are activists who are just looking for a problem in society, and now they're trying to push onto the other side, which is like, hey, we feel oppressed, but let's just have female dominance. Like that's really what they're after is female dominance over men, and then they want men subjugated so intensely that all they can do is just kneel before us and apologize for everything. It's really sad. Ronaldo says, I'm here just to say that your videos are some of the best content that this platform has to offer. Your analysis are so good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Turd Rocket, you're back. One of my favorite good men in story is Last of the Mohicans. Major Hayward sacrifices himself for Cora out of love, even though at that point in the story he knows she doesn't love him the same way. I've never watched that movie, but that's a good story to tell. Thank you, Flying Dog Art, for the super sticker. Chris Nicholson says, the message of Barbie goes with your new video. People think that they are giving up family to change history, though very few ever will. A life wasted screaming into the wind could be better spent improving their community. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I like the way you put that, screaming into the wind, because that's exactly right. I think the best thing an individual can do is to create a good family and be the best community member possible, because the way one individual can change so many lives, can touch so many lives, that it casts out ripples out into the world, right? And the best example of that, because I was thinking about this the other day, is It's a Wonderful Life. If you haven't seen that movie, it's an old movie from I want to say early 1940s. It's with Jimmy Stewart, and it talks about what impact just one life has on everyone around them. That you take that life out, and it creates this massive chasm, right? We are significant, but we can't think that we're so significant that we ignore everything around us. because it takes a lot of work to build a good life around you, right? Be a good friend, be a good parent, be a good be a good daughter, be a good husband, be a good wife, all these things, be a good sibling. All of those things take work, and that should not be marginalized just that you can go scream out at some faceless corporation. Okay, this is the last one. The Bazaar says, I was one of the only guys on opening night, and I felt my heart slowly sinking as the film went on and was unbelievably sad by the end. Um, I completely get it. Even I felt very demoralized coming out of it. If it weren't for the fact that I had watched it with a friend and we were just making fun of it, I would definitely feel so much more depressed. It was severely depressing because it's a terrible outlook on life. Terrible outlook on life. So, Realistic Delinquent says, this is for you to invest in a studio microphone. Thank you. I have a good microphone, but I guess it's very echoey in here. So sorry about that. Well, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate all of you being here. And for the support, for the super chats, thank you so much. And thank you for always supporting me on this channel. That video I posted at 4 a.m. today, I mentally was ready. I was like, it might flop. It's okay. It might flop. And it's done so well. It's already crossed 100,000. It crossed 100,000 in like 5 hours. It's amazing. So I'm really grateful as usual. So thank you so much. And the next video, by the way, I'm going to be working on, it's going to not really focus on Barbie, but I'm going to talk about the patriarchy. I think it's a good time to tackle that one. So you can expect that in a couple weeks. I'm usually taking about 3 to 4 weeks to make a new video because I try to put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into it. So stick around for that. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful Monday and good rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye.